I had such fun trying all the different modelling pastes out and then trying out fillers to see if they were as good as the art modelling paste. If you haven't seen the videos of that, I'll put links to those. I decided to see whether I could make sort of some little art pieces because I had these tiny canvases. And again, I had so much fun playing with texture. I think it's because I'm a watercolourist and everything in my world is kind of flat and 2D, that suddenly when I'm allowed texture, I get a bit carried away. Anyway, this was brilliant fun and I really like the results. So I thought I'd show you how I made these. I made these with a homemade scraper I just made out of a bit of mount board to see whether I could, and that got a bit soggy after a while. So I have treated myself to some cake scrapers, and they were the princely sum of £2.88 from Amazon. That's just over $3. This time I thought I would use a modelling paste, and I've selected the Pavio modelling paste because in my tests I found that it was pretty absorbent, it was nice and white, and that will give me the option, if I do want to paint it with watercolours like I did here, it'll behave itself, and if I want to cover it with gold leaf or copper leaf, I quite fancy copper. Anyway, I can do that as well. I have 4 little canvases. They've all been coated with one coat of watercolour ground. I'm going to put on a good coating all over the surface. So when I say good coating, a couple of millimetres, 1/8 of an inch, that sort of thickness. Let's see what scrapers I've got. I thought that one would be good for smoothing off. Okay. Arch and then a drag. If you go for a bit of a wiggle, the great thing is you can just smooth it over. So I'm trying to keep that edge. Why don't we turn it upside down and do the exact same from the other direction? Scrape off any excess. I want to sort the edges out. Again, if you miss something, it doesn't matter because you can always sand it once it's totally dry. So with your scrapers, worth cleaning those off, saving any product, and then giving them a wipe. Okay, let's do the next one. Just like icing a cake. So again, so come back the other way. That's better. We'll just take off the excess. Right, let's go a bit more freeform on this one. This way. Well, there are my 4 tiles, or not tiles, but mini canvases, and I definitely like the circle. That texture could be interesting. I've got a few wobbles on there that I'm really tempted to try and sort out, but I think I might make worse. We'll let it dry and then come back for decoration. These have dried overnight, so now I can think what to do with them. And I think this one I am going to put watercolours on, and I'm thinking teals and turquoises. But these 3 I'm thinking would be great with metal leaf, and I'm feeling quite coppery today. This one I think I'll just do plain because it's got this complicated pattern, or more complicated pattern, and I think that will show that up. This one is my favourite at the moment, and I think it would be nice to pick out some of the lines just in black ink. This one I think I might do just plain as well. Order priority is get the ink on first, because that needs to dry before I can put the gold size on. Don't worry, I'm going to show you what that is. I don't have to do this perfectly. I'm going to pick out this line. If I start here, this one will be pretty much dry by the time I get there. Putting on metal leaf, you need a special glue called size, and it dries to be as sort of tacky as a post-it note. Never dries fully. I like to tint mine, and I'm going to put a bit of phthalo blue, because a little bit of blue showing through either gold or copper looks really cool, in my opinion. Mix it into your gold size, and it's just that the gold does break, particularly on this really deep texture, as it goes on. Therefore it looks far nicer with the colour showing through. If you want a warm effect, something like a red or a burnt sienna underpainting is lovely. If you want a cooler effect, you can do black, and that crackles through. And all you do with the gold size, we'll move that out of the way, is just brush it on. And the great thing about having coloured it, you can see where you've missed. You have to wait for it to dry, so it is tacky as a post-it note, because if you try and put it on when it's wet, it just sort of mushes up your metal leaf. Want to do the sides as well. If by any chance you do miss a bit and your metal leaf doesn't stick, really don't panic, because you can always just go over the top. And it'll take, I would say, 15 minutes to dry, maybe a little longer, because it's sort of pooling in the valley. It does depend how humid it is where you are, how hot it is. But today is going to be a hot day, and one of the reasons I'm doing this now is my studio will be so blooming hot later that I will not be able to be in it. And then sides again. What I need to do is try and get the gold size on nice and smoothly where I've got those black lines. That is very important to the design. If by any chance, when I've gold leaf this, I don't like the black lines, I could just cover them up very, very easily with a little more gold leaf, and no one will know they were there. I think using a flat brush makes this a little bit easier. I need to wash that brush. I can always put some cling film over this to save that excess for a day or two. It will dry up eventually. And I want to carry on the colour to the side. Actually be sensible, because it's going to drip off the side. I'll just put it onto a bit of kitchen towel to absorb. Just going to grab a teeny bit of Prussian blue. We'll let it dry and see what it looks like. This is now dry. I fancy doing this copper, and because this is so textured, I think it will be better to put it on small bits at a time so that I can tamp it down into the texture. If I put one big sheet over, which is the temptation, it will stick to the tops of the mountains and not get into the valleys, and lots of the blue will show through. Whereas this way, I think we'll get less breakage. You just put little bits on. I can sort of break it. I can cut it. If you cut it, keep the paper between it and cut it with the scissors so it doesn't sort of stick to the scissors. Just gonna very carefully apply it like that. You'd find that real gold leaf is slightly thinner and harder to apply. And because real gold leaf is so blooming expensive, you would want to be saving every tiny little scrap that's left over. Something like copper leaf or artificial gold leaf is not as expensive, so you can be a little bit more gung-ho with it. I'm going to do the sides as well. Now, can you see, say in that area, there's blue showing through, so I could get a spare bit and just rub it over to fill in the gap. Unless, of course, you like the blue showing through, in which case you're fine. Say on a flatter surface with less texture, usually you want to use as few sheets as possible so joins don't show and things like that. So these little gaps are called holidays, which is rather sweet. And any spare bits when you brush it off are called skewings. And you can use the skewings to fill in the holidays. When you're happy, just take a soft brush and gently remove all the excess. Don't want anything too stiff because that will scratch the surface, and usually you're going for a pretty high gloss, beautiful shiny finish. Well, there you go. And I'm going to do exactly the same with this one. And then we can gently remove all the excess. So we have two coppery ones. What you can use, if you don't like the sheets, you can get these flakes. And I haven't used these before. She says just putting a little copper flake on. So why don't I? Always up for an experiment. Oh, they're not really flakes, they're quite long, aren't they? I was given these ages ago. I just wonder whether they might be better for filling in this really sort of textured surface. And there is only one way to find out, which is by doing it. Wouldn't use these on a large flat surface because you're not going to get as nice a finish, a sort of mirror finish, if that's what you're after. But on this sort of surface, I think they are fine. Right, so then If our theory is correct and we applied the glue in the right places, when we brush, we should have our black line revealed. Just going to go for a slightly firmer brush, I say not harsh, but just to clear that up because it has been a bit of a mess. If, for example, we've got this little bit here, right? Just try and scrape it off. These will now need a spray coat of gloss varnish, or you can brush it on, but if you brush it on, it potentially will fill up some of the texture and pool there. So I think spray is probably the way to go. This is dry, so I thought I would use some of this liquid glass on it to give it a real shine, just for a bit of fun. And this product is a little bit like resin, but you just don't have to mix parts up and it doesn't smell, and the cleanup is just with water, etc. So you can put it on really thick to get a sort of resin effect, or thinner, or you can use it as a pouring medium. I've got a whole video about this if you're interested. I've raised this up just on a pot so it doesn't stick to the surface, and then you can either tilt it or use a brush to spread the product out. Now the manufacturers, so that's TriArt, say this will, is a good alternative to resin. I have seen some comments that it yellows over time. Now I've only used it within the last year and not seen any problems with it. But if you have used it, I would be interested in your experience. But obviously I don't want to use something that deteriorates over time. Even on, a little practice piece like this, you might as well do it properly, because you never know when you're going to create a masterpiece. It's always worth using good materials just in case something happens and you paint the best picture that you've ever painted in your life. So the other good thing about having it raised is that you can generally move it around without getting too sticky. So here they are, hanging in a local cafe. I'd love to do a really large piece because I think the possibilities of texture with watercolour or mixed media are pretty much endless.